Welcome to the Orange is the New Black podcast. I am your host, Ace Boogie, joined by my co-host, Zim Ace. And man, what a rough start to the season. Zim kind of predicted this potentially as a worst-case scenario, 0-4, and now we're here. What should we start with first, Zim?
So, I've been thinking about this long and hard. I'm very, very glad that you guys are even clicking this. I'm very, very appreciative that you all are still interested in anyone's thought on this team after a performance like that Monday night. If you all are not aware or if you cut the game off, the Bengals lost to the Steelers on Monday Night Football for their, I believe, their seventh straight primetime loss, 23-7. I would have went off if we had that right after the game. I've had some time to sit back, get my thoughts together, and realize that let's lower the expectations, everyone. And I hate to say that because I preach nothing but winning mentality, stuff like that. And it's just time to kind of, like, look at this from different perspectives. And I want to know, like, long term, before we even start talking about the game, Ace, I know I have my thoughts. What do you think are, like, some impact moves that you think the Bengals could make? Because we got all the time in the world to talk about the game.
Okay.
But judging off of what you see, I just want to get right to the, like, meat and potatoes of this. What is like some impact things that you could say if you had a bulleted list right now that you think could fix this or prepare for the future?
I think it starts off with the top of the list, which a lot of Bengals fans, it's always, a heated debate about this, but I think that the last game pretty much closed the door on Andy Dalton as the quarterback for this team. So with that being said, the first move is that you draft a quarterback. I think it's pretty obvious, right? You have to start there. Outside of that, you also have to try to fix the offensive line, which I think not continuing with Andy Dalton allows that money to open up for us to have some cap flexibility, being that they already have cap room now, but it just gives you a lot more flexibility to rebuild this roster as we see fit. I think certain moves need to happen, most notably outside of Andy Dalton. You need to move on from Dre Kirkpatrick. You need to figure out how to fix what is wrong with the secondary as well. I think that you need to determine if the defensive coordinator that we currently have in Lou Anarumo is the guy. If he is, then you continue with him. But I think you also have to keep an eye on the market, especially with the Minnesota Vikings struggling right now. If Mike Zimmer is there, you have to go after him. And there's going to be a ton of people knocking on his door for a defensive coordinator position, possibly still another head coaching position. So I think that that's another way that you could impact this team from a defensive standpoint.
Man, I'll take him as a head coach right now.
Exactly.
I would take him as a head coach right now because I don't think you would see what you saw on Monday night. I feel like Zach, for the first time ever, the honeymoon period I told you was over last week.
Right.
I think he's in over his head a little bit because, if you're banking on your offensive mind or offensive genius, you want to talk about, like, pure deflation. How about to go down 21, 24 points or whatever it is, and you're now running the ball at the end of the game because you just don't even have any more cards to play because you're pretty much just saying, there's like 8-9 minutes left in the game. You're pretty much saying that I don't have enough willpower, I don't have enough brain power to draw up anything that could save this offensive line. When we had Laser and we had all these different guys coming in here, they were getting the ball out quick. I was so mad at the TV screen, and I get it now. I get why I was like, wow, we can't just always get the ball out quick every time. They got to protect. No, it is very, 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 very clear to me. This offensive line is atrocious to the point where I don't think it's safe to even drop back Andy Dalton. I don't even know why Andy Dalton was even in at the end of that game. Like, right. If you're preserving for your future or anything like that, even if you think you're going to trade him, like, right. That's an asset that I don't even want to get hurt. And on the last 3 hits that I saw him get hit, they were brutal. That was the first time I actually felt so bad for Andy Dalton that all of my I started to rethink about my whole process, and I do think that Andy Dalton should get moved, and I've always felt like that, so that wouldn't change. But I finally felt for the first time like, man, I think I'm underselling how bad the organization has failed him. For him to be an average quarterback in the NFL, for him to be Matt Ryan, for him to be Jared Goff, he could be that, but this organization is not giving him the tools to do it.
Right. I think you make a very good point there, and I think Zach Taylor does play a role in that because he made the decision to try to part ways from Frank Pollock, which was another huge decision.
Huge mistake.
And brought in Jim Turner. And Jim Turner is at fault as well, so I think they need to look at the offensive line coaching as well. But this is what I'm going to say about the offensive line. I agree with you that they haven't done the best to try to set Andy Dalton up for success. However, I think that they have at least tried, right? So they made the fatal mistake of allowing Andrew Whitworth to leave, allowing Kevin Zeitler to walk, but they tried to and essentially fix the position, right? So they drafted a Billy Price, they drafted a Jonah Williams this year, they traded for Cordy Glenn. So these were moves that they've actually tried to fix the line. The issue is these guys, have gotten hurt. So they've gotten hurt. Billy Price hasn't worked out, and you're stuck with a bad line. The worst move that they made was re-signing Bobby Hart and assuming that Bobby Hart was going to be good enough to be a starting right tackle in the NFL after coming off of a season where they revamped the offense, brought in a new offensive line coach, and he still gave up 10 sacks. So you knew what you were going to get there. So instead of going after some of the better free agent tackles, they decided to go with Bobby Hart and ended up cashing him out. The only good thing is that they actually have an out at the end of this first year. So if they do want to move on away from him, then they can. But I think that it goes with the front office. I think another thing is that I'm not going to be quick to jump on Zach because I feel like they kind of bamboozled him. Tobin definitely bamboozled him. I think that Andy Dalton was a part of coming in here and taking this job. Like, they weren't going to hire you unless you were good with Andy Dalton being your quarterback. And to me, I feel like as a new head coach, you got to be able to have the opportunity to go and get your guy. Now, with that being said, I still feel like Andy Dalton was not the guy for the Bengals. And we've looked at a lot of things. We thought that it was Marvin Lewis. We thought that it was the front office, which I think those are valid. But part of that mix, too, of things that haven't changed is Andy Dalton. And I understand that he got sacked 8 times. I understand that. I understand our offensive line is trash. I understand that. But early in the beginning of the game, there were times, and I think it was outside of the first drive where he got sacked on third down, there were times where he could have made plays, and there were times where there wasn't pressure in his face. One that sticks out to me was a third down that he threw into the ground where the receiver was wide open. And those 3 and outs just kind of, in a sense, have become the norm for this team, where you go out there, you get all these 3 and outs, the defense holds, eventually they get tired, eventually the time of possession swings to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They had about 4 or 5 opportunities, in my opinion, to put up points where they should have had at least 20 points before the Steelers got their first touchdown. So for me, it's a multitude of things. It's a bad offensive line bunched with a quarterback who cannot raise the level of play around him. A lot of people talk about the sacks and things of that nature, and the one thing that I say is a lot of people are like, oh, well, you have to have an offensive line or else you cannot be a good quarterback in this league. And I keep pointing to the case in point of Deshaun Watson. And what's interesting is everyone's like, oh, you could go
Russell Wilson in that same, the point that you're about to make. You could say Russell Wilson. You could say Aaron Rodgers. You could name a lot of players that aren't even. You can name quarterbacks, but generally they're elite. There are quarterbacks though. But finish your thought though, because I think I know where you're going.
And the reason that I bring up Deshaun Watson, because when you bring up Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers, people are going to try to counter that point with, oh, well, those guys are a dime a dozen. We never had the opportunity to draft them. We had the opportunity to draft Deshaun Watson, and we passed on him. And the interesting thing is, when you look at the numbers, I hear all of this pressure this, pressure that. Pressure is more than just sacks. Well, last year, Deshaun Watson was the number one pressure quarterback in the NFL. There's other guys like Phillip Rivers as well.
And this year, I showed a stat too, where Andy Dalton coming into Monday night's game was the fifth lowest pressure quarterback in the NFL. He actually had more. He actually had more time than anyone. Now this game was totally different, but
I say that to say this. So Deshaun Watson, like Andy Dalton, has been sacked 19 times this season. Right, 8 sacks in one game. Deshaun Watson has been sacked 18 times this season. However, the Texans are 2-2. Exactly. The Texans are 2-2, and Watson has had a quarterback rating of 99.1. He's also thrown 6 touchdowns and 1 interception. Dalton is 0-4, has thrown 5 touchdowns and 4 interceptions, and has a quarterback rating of 82.2. This is where I get into a lot of people using the offensive line as a crutch. Doesn't work for me, because there's other quarterbacks who have faced similar circumstances, and you could even make an argument that Deshaun Watson only has DeAndre Hopkins. He doesn't have a Joe Mixon. He doesn't have a John Ross. He doesn't have a Tyler Boyd. He doesn't have a Tyler Eifert. He's got less weapons, and he's playing better.
And less time. We're talking about a 9-year quarterback versus a guy been in the league 3-4 years.
Exactly. So that's where people lose me with he's not going to do anything because the offensive line is bad. And that's the difference between an Andy Dalton and a Deshaun Watson is there are certain guys that when things around them are not ideal, not perfect, they still do not let it affect their play. Now, Deshaun Watson, he didn't have the greatest game on Sunday, but they were still in the game, and they still have a shot at the playoffs. And this was a guy that was in a similar situation, being 0-3 last year, starting off that season, and ending that season 11-5. So when people tell me that Andy Dalton isn't part of this problem, that, to me, is an excuse. And one thing that I can't stand with this organization and this team from our fan base is that we make too many excuses for why we aren't where we should be at. Yes, the offensive line is bad. Yes, the front office isn't doing their thing. But you're going to have to put Andy Dalton into that category, and that's where I'm at with Andy Dalton. Go ahead, Zim.
Okay. You made so many different points, and I wanted to let you get your thoughts off, so I'm hoping you said as much as you can say, whatever. But let me go into when I first phrased the question long term, right? Because based on the game, we're seeing a lot of players that were not inherited from Zach Taylor. Nick Vigil misses 2 big tackles. Preston Brown looks super slow. There were so many different you mentioned Dre Kirkpatrick. His contract is over, I think, next year, but they can get out of the contract at the end of this year, so he'll be gone. Don't worry about that one if the front office has sense. But this is what I was trying to say. I asked you that question because ultimately this was a project that was presented to Zach Taylor as, hey, can you work with the guys that we currently have? If the answer is no after 4 games, 0-4, which I believe it's undoubtedly so, like, you cannot work with these players. You got to think, and I know a lot of people that don't, I challenge everybody to get your mindset into a winning attitude. Think about what would the Patriots do. Think about how bad the Patriots were when I was in the 90s. Like, the Patriots were worse than the Browns. But what they did at one point is decide, and it doesn't involve tanking like the Dolphins are as an extreme case, which is crazy because the Bengals are absolutely, I think currently right now today, worse than the Dolphins, and they aren't trying to tank, which is insane. But I say that to say this. This is not extreme thought patterns to say this. You are currently you did a project, it didn't work. The players that you paid that much money to before the trade line goes, they have to get outside of their comfort zone and do what they don't do, and that's get on the phone line. Carlos Dunlap, Geno Atkins, A.J. Green, Andy Dalton. have to be moved. And I know that sounds really, really crazy to a lot of people. But in order for this to work, you have to inherit the new day mantra. You have to inherit what it takes when you're saying, we want to take the next step to be better. And the only way you could do that is freedom. How do you get freedom? Money. Money frees up your thought patterns. It frees up the moves that you can make. You have to move on from these aging players. They have 6 or 7 guys that take up so much cap space on this team that now you know the answer now. Don't wait till you get 0-7, 0-8, get past the trade deadline and try to figure out what to do with these guys. There are teams like the Chiefs that would grab Geno Atkins up right now, done like whatever, and you might not get what you thought you could. But if you wait, you won't get anything. If you wait till he's 33, 34, you won't get anything. And if you know that you cannot win right now, what are you doing with a brand new coach trying to push a square circle through a square peg or whatever the concept or term is that is used in that? I was so against the whole AJ Green thing getting moved before this season started, but it is unfair. It makes no sense at all. There's no argument to me to keep any of those guys now after what I saw on Monday Night Football. And I know that sounds very, very extreme to a lot of people. The only person I probably could see them kind of keeping along, like that gets paid at that level, is maybe AJ Green. But that would be like what you're going to see coming up Sunday, where you got aging veteran Larry Fitzgerald working with a bunch of rookie wide receivers, just giving them knowledge. You're not trying to outperform other teams with that. That's one concept that I've kind of gone over my head. Like, yeah, he'd be a great mentor for everybody. But if you're a real fan of AJ Green, do you really want to see him? Like, look at Larry Fitzgerald right now, 0-4 on a Cardinals team with another coach that probably shouldn't be an NFL coach right now. I'm not saying that Zach Taylor is not head coaching material, but I don't believe he's head coaching material right now. And I think they jumped the gun on that thing. And the thing that compares the 90s with currently right now is that the Bengals were going through a bunch of head coaches like crazy. And it takes time like that. You might have to do that with quarterbacks too. That's why I wrote an article one time for Locked On Bengals where I'm saying you should be drafting a quarterback every other year. And people were like, well, if you got your guy, then no. The Patriots still got Jacoby Brissett. The Patriots still had Jimmy G drafted. You always are looking for a quarterback in the event of an injury in case anything happens. And that was my biggest concern with the whole Andy Dalton project. Because right now at 0-4, had you drafted some of these guys like a Haskins or something like that, even though Haskins looked horrible on Sunday, you at least have legitimate assets and competition behind them to build up what you could say is your future foundation. Currently, as it stands right now, it's so hard for me to look at the team from a week-to-week basis because I'm already thinking about the off season. And I know that's terrible because they're 0-4. Think about this. I got to go to a Rams game in London. You think I'm about to sit in there for a whole game of that? For 4 quarters? I'm gonna go get my crumpets and tea, and then I'm gonna go sit through 4 quarters of that. Not happening. 2 quarters I give them at most. If it looks anything like that, I don't care if that's the greatest comeback of the century. I don't deserve that. No Bengals fan deserves any of that crap that you saw on Monday Night Football, and that starts from the coaching. That starts from the players and everything like that. I understand your argument about the offensive line because I'm with you. They tried, right? But Dalton, to me, for the first time, I cannot pin that on Dalton on Monday Night Football because that even the Pro Football Focus numbers say in the 14 years that they've been doing this, that was the worst offensive line performance since 2003 that they've ever recorded. Michael Jordan had a grade of 15. We're talking about on a scale from 0 to 100.
Right.
15. Dalton, yes, early on. Now, if you're going to talk about Dalton early on, too, think about this. Eifert dropped the touchdown pass. You know, like that's one thing where he put it right on the money. And Dalton didn't do what it took to elevate a team. But I think Dalton did enough early on to make that game close, right? And that's what my expectations are for him. I'm never thinking that Dalton's going to elevate the team. But from an offensive line standpoint, that was the worst, most atrocious thing I've ever seen in my life. And part of your stuff makes sense where you're saying, yeah, they did try, because I do believe it. But you notice the common theme? They played the Buffalo Bills last week. They should have went and got Ty Nsekhe. They didn't go get him. As a result, we're watching a play on 3rd and 17, and Ty Nsekhe is blocking the hell out of who is that? Andrew Brown or whatever, where everybody's like it's holding, and all I'm thinking about is, damn, we should have got Ty Nsekhe. But because think about this, the Bengals did go get Bobby Hart. Okay, they did go get John Miller. They did start Michael Jordan. You know, and then the only excuse that I can give them is Andre Smith at left tackle. But this is the point, though. Why would you even set him up for failure like that? That is failing him, failing the organization, the team, and everybody by even thinking that Andre Smith could even play left tackle. That is terrible for them. For anybody, Jim Turner, he should be fired just for starting Andre Smith. They should have did everything in their power, if they do care about Andy Dalton, to say, look, we're going to put all the chips on you, number 14, and I'm going to give you everything you can. Yeah, this didn't work out, this didn't work out, but we're going to go get another guy. We're going to run in guys every single week, and we're going to do trials, and we're going to get you a legit person that actually can play tackle. I'm watching people like Cam Fleming and all the guys in free agency that they let pass that got paid crumbs, like Ty Nsekhe, and then you pay Bobby Hart all that money. You started Michael Jordan over Billy Price, who Billy Price looked terrible later on in the last drive as well. But these are their guys, though. And that's what scares me about the future, and that's why I asked that question. Dalton doesn't deserve this. The fans don't deserve this. If you want to realistically get on board with New Day, to me, you have to cash out. Go get me a second round for Dunlap. Go get me a second round for Geno. Go get me a second round for Dalton. And possibly a first for A.J. Green. You think that the Patriots don't want A.J. Green if they went and did all that to go get Antonio Brown? You think the Patriots won't give you a first, or you think I'm not even going to go into all these scenarios, but the point is, why would you wait till these guys turn 34, 35 just so you could say what? You don't even have a ring of honor. So it's not even like these guys are getting their jerseys like hung up. Like you're just wasting their years. So if you're going to get with this whole thing and get the staff right and everything with Zach and give him a legitimate shot to say, hey, these are your guys and stuff like that, you got to make the moves now because it's over. We said that before the game started. It is over. You are 0-4. No team goes to the playoffs off of that. And even if they did go to the playoffs, that's an automatic first-round exit in the most miracle setting where they actually made the playoffs. There's no way that they can make the playoffs. They can't beat the Ravens in 2 weeks if they do cream the Cardinals. I can't even look at their games and look at it from a week-to-week basis. I'm already looking at who do I keep, who do I let go, and I can't get my mind past it.
Right. You made some very great points, especially with the offensive line. And people are going to say, yeah, Ace, you're not giving Andy a fair shot because his offensive line is completely trash.
All right, let me make that clear.
But hold on, I got one more. I have one last point to make on that because I know I'm going to get people in the comments talking about it.
Let's get that clear. Dalton's trash. All right, I don't want anybody to think that I'm taking up for Dalton. I'm just saying on Monday night he didn't deserve that, and if he had a legit line, he would have played better. But he's trash. And he needs to go, and I've always said that. So don't think that I'm taking up for Dalton. If this is your first time tuning in to me, no, he's trash. They ruined him. They fried his brain. He's gun shy. He's jittery in the pocket, and he's no more. Sorry.
Gotcha. So the last thing that I'll say is when we had Andrew Whitworth, when we had Kevin Zeitler, when we had a decent offensive line, what did he do with it? Absolutely nothing. You talk about the Thursday night football game, the Browns game. You sent me that in a message and said, don't forget this. He has done absolutely nothing with this team. No playoff wins. When he's been in the postseason, I think it's like 1 touchdown and 6 interceptions. Andy Dalton is not winning you football games. He's not going to win you a playoff game. He's not going to win you a championship. And that's why you have to make the move at quarterback. You talked about trades. What is the point of holding on to Andy Dalton at this point? Why not trade him right now to a team that might need a quarterback? There's going to be a team that's going to have a season-ending injury with some quarterback that they're going to need to bring a guy in. why not have that guy be Andy Dalton? Why not? To me, I think that's possibly your biggest chip is to trade Andy Dalton. Throw Ryan Finley in there. Me and you both don't think Ryan Finley is going to do anything. There's not really that much of a difference. He's not going to be the guy going forward next year. But what that allows you to do is, number one, get assets for Andy Dalton. Number two, see what Ryan Finley actually looks like. Number three, it allows you to complete your mission of tanking to end up with one of the top draft picks. Now, you talked about A.J. Green. The thing that kind of sticks out to me
and Dunlap and Atkins. I want you to address those guys too.
I just want to focus on A.J. Green because he, to me, is cut a little bit from a different cloth in terms of those guys. And you made a great analogy with Larry Fitzgerald. He is really good friends with Larry Fitzgerald, and he wants his career essentially to mirror something like Larry Fitzgerald. So for A.J. Green, now his makeup might have changed, given the current circumstances, but it's really big to him to want to only play for one team like Larry Fitzgerald. It's really big to him for his family to be happy, and they love Cincinnati. They love living there. They love the community. So A.J. Green might move a little different in terms of that. So from that perspective, I think you owe it to him if he wants to stay here to at least give him that other year to at least see next year if they do bring in a rookie quarterback, see if that improves things. And if not, by the end of his career, do what you did with Chad Johnson and Corey Dillon and trade him to the Patriots, ensuring that he will get a Super Bowl. He will end his career on a championship level. But I think with him, it might be a little bit differently because he wants that whole thing of playing for one team. So I'm not sure where his head at.
You know that for a fact, though? You know that for a fact?
From yesterday, Zim Ace, who's moved on, who used to be with the Enquirer, moved on to Green Bay. There's been a lot of chatter of, hey, from the Green Bay fans and from the NFL in general, what's going on with A.J. Green? What is he thinking? He wants to get out of there. Zim Ace said this is clearly being statements are being made from people that don't know A.J. Green. He said, number one, A.J. Green loves Cincinnati. Him and his family both love it. Number two, I can't recall everything exactly he said, but he said that he did not see A.J. Green wanting to be out of Cincinnati. It was basically what Zim Ace said. He was like, as a guy who's interviewed him, as a guy who knows A.J. Green, that is probably the last thing on his mind right now is leaving Cincinnati, which kind of shocked me, honestly, based off of, obviously, we saw his facial expression and things of that nature. So for Jim, to say that kind of threw me off. But I mean, it depends. It depends where we are. I think, like you said, if they want to do a full rebuild, you do have to look at those guys and say, if this isn't working, let's get these guys out of here. But do you do that, or do you go the Chiefs way and keep those guys around and just insert a new quarterback and fix the offensive line? That could be a quick turnaround.
I mean, but look at Kyler. To me, like, you're looking at, like, look at Kyler. You went and got a hot shot head coach in over his head, kind of what I feel like Zach Taylor is currently right now. Because if he was legit, that wouldn't have looked like that to me. Like, I'm not saying that he can't win here, but like, that's what happens is you get a new quarterback sometimes, and you got the same personnel, and it still look trash as I don't know what, and you had the number one pick. Right. And so I'm saying, to me, just from a business perspective, what sense would it make keeping these older guys that take up all this cap space that will have depleted value in a year or two from now? Like, it just doesn't make sense business-wise, like, to keep that, because their stock is slowly going down and down and down. Like, every single time that they play, and they're getting worn out because they're on the field so daggone much too. You know what I'm saying? Like, at what point are you going to say, this is my point. You got a nice core. You got a nice core with Hubbard, Lawson, and guys like that. If Lawson can stay healthy, or different people like that, like, you have a nice core. So why does it make sense to keep these older guys? Like, you're going to use Hubbard to usher in the new people and stuff like that. And to me, it's not what the Dolphins are doing, where they're trying to create a whole new roster. But you need to fill in a lot of holes on this team. And the way that you can fill in a lot of holes on the offensive line is through free agency, which costs a lot of money. And the only way you can go get the money is to cut ties with some of these guys that just can't. Geno Atkins is amazing, and I'm not taking that away from him. But if you're really, really being realistic with yourself, the Bengals can't be good for another 2 years. Like, just good. Not even, playoff, like, winning level. Just good. 2 years to me, right? By then, Geno Atkins is now, like, 33, 34 years old. You know what I'm saying? So, like, you depleted his value, and it doesn't really do anything because then the performance is going to drop off a cliff because I'm already seeing it right now. I already feel like that right now. But he still grades out really well, stuff like that. Same thing with Carlos Dunlap. Like, teams like the Chiefs and stuff like that, they would just – I feel like you could go get your value because those are teams that know that they can win a playoff game.
Right. Well, that is all the time that we have for today, but obviously with the season going on how it is, we'll have plenty of time to discuss our thoughts on what the Bengals should do moving forward from a rebuilding standpoint, from a draft standpoint. Just want to thank you guys again for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe. We'll talk about a lot of things, and we'll give you our actual thoughts on what we think about the Bengals, the state of the Bengals, and things of that nature. So if you're riding with us, be sure to subscribe to the Cincy Jungle podcast on all platforms. Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify will be there. You can also find myself, New Stripe City on YouTube. You can find Zim on Instagram at Zim_Hude. This is going to be it. This is going to be the ride. So, guys, buckle up.
Buckle up. Because that Hude train is coming, and that thing is trying to crash soon.
Exactly. Crash and burn. So, we'll still be here for you guys. And it's always
I gotta go to London to see this. I gotta go to London to see this.
Crumpets and L's.
Crumpets and L's. I'll go to every restaurant or pub around there and ask them, hey, where do y'all serve L's at? Because that's where we'll get it.
They're gonna be at Wembley Stadium on the Bengals side.
Lord help us, man. Thank y'all for tuning in. Hude.